Welcome to Focus Washington. I'm Chuck Conconi. My guest today is the Sri Lankan Minister of External Affairs, Professor G.L Peiris. Minister Peiris, thank you so much for being with me here today. You have a really busy agenda while you're here in the United States. You visited with the Secretary General of the United Nations, you're meeting with members of Congress, and you're going to meet with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. What do you expect to accomplish during this trip?
Well, our main objective is to inform the government of the United States of the very exciting, the very positive developments which are taking place right now in Sri Lanka after the eradication of terrorism. This is what held us back during the last 20 years. As you probably know, when we received independence from the British in 1948, we had the highest per capita income in that part of the world. And we were described by no less a figure than Lee Kuan Yew, the architect of modern Singapore, as a model for economic development throughout the Commonwealth.
So did you discuss this with the Secretary General? Was that one of the issues?
No, with the Secretary, no, we briefed the Secretary General about the enormous potential of the country, which we are now in a position to take advantage of after 2 decades of conflict. The United Nations is directly involved in many of these current initiatives, particularly the resettlement of internally displaced people. That has been a problem.
These are the Tamils you're speaking about?
Yeah, in parts of the north and the east. And we briefed the Secretary General about the very considerable progress which has been made with regard to the resettlement of these people. The numbers have come down from 300,000 to something like 40,000. And the initiatives of the government of Sri Lanka, not just with regard to physical resettlement, but the revival of the economy of those parts of the country, so that these people can live their lives with dignity. The location of industries in those parts of the country, employment opportunities, restoration of livelihoods, right?
You're talking about the Tamil territory in the north mostly. The development process
yes,
going to take place.
Yeah, that's correct. The development of infrastructure, roads, irrigation systems, power and energy to feed industries that are being set up in that part of the country. So all of this, which amounts to a revival of the economy of those parts of the country after 2 decades of painful conflict. Now, this is a matter of direct interest to the United Nations. Also, the resuscitation of the democratic process, the holding of elections in those parts of the country, right? Local government elections could not be held for a long time because of the turbulence in that part of the country. In the eastern province, we have completed that process, and we now have in place a provincial council that is headed by a Tamil-speaking leader, a former guerrilla, now elected by the votes of the people of that area. So these are very exciting developments which the United Nations has been following closely, and I thought it might be useful for me to take advantage of my presence in New York to brief the Secretary General personally about some of these developments which have taken place during the last few weeks and months in Sri Lanka.
Did you also discuss an International Crisis Group report that was critical of the government during the final days of the war, as well as some negative coverage you received from British media?
Yes, we did. Our response to that basically is that there is very little that is new in that report. Some of these allegations have been out there in the public domain for a long time, and the International Crisis Group report consists largely of a repetition of those allegations with no new material and no attribution of the material they use to any specific source. So there is no possibility of verification, because they would only say, we understand from a source that was present when an alleged incident took place, right? We don't know what the source is. We cannot ascertain the identity of the source. And the report itself is couched in very vague language. For example, hundreds of thousands of people were injured or something.
Yes.
Hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. The report says tens of thousands. Now, what does that mean? Tens of thousands, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000? It's completely nebulous. So that's one of the problems. In any case, what I indicated to the Secretary General was that the President of Sri Lanka has now put in place an effective domestic mechanism to probe the allegations that have been made. Now there was...
so there will be a study made to respond to this?
Well, it's more than a study. It is a commission that has been appointed with very extensive powers to call witnesses, to record evidence, and among other things to ascertain whether any individual or group of persons was responsible for the commission of acts that constitute a violation of international humanitarian law. So a formal commission under Sri Lanka's laws has been set up for this purpose. Now, soon afterwards, Ambassador Susan Rice, the United States Ambassador to the UN, made what we consider to be a very helpful and positive statement, in which she welcomed the appointment of the commission. She said this is very good, it's refreshing, and she went on to say that commissions of this kind in post-conflict societies have made a contribution of value to the reconciliation process.
Yes.
But she went on to say, well, that is so, if the commission is to serve a useful purpose, then certain conditions must be satisfied, and she spelled out what those conditions were. For example, the people who are appointed must be people of independent stature, they must be competent, their mandate must be broad enough to enable them to do their work effectively. Now, we pointed out to the Secretary General and to others that the commission which has been appointed in Sri Lanka amply fulfills the conditions that have been stipulated by the US Ambassador to the UN. What she says is essential, is demonstrably there with regard to the Sri Lankan commission that has been appointed.
We're running out of time. One quick question. You're meeting with the Secretary of State. What do you expect to discuss with Hillary Clinton?
Well, with Hillary Clinton, we will discuss among other things, the role for the US government, US companies in Sri Lanka. There's a lot of work to be done with regard to infrastructure, right? Not just in the north and the east, but all over the country. The Secretary of State will, I think, be very interested in initiatives in Sri Lanka with regard to a political settlement. The government of Sri Lanka does not believe that a military victory solves this problem finally and irrevocably. It must be accompanied by a political initiative. What is the nature of that political initiative? Consultation with the Tamil leadership. What are the plans that we have in mind to put in place a solution that is just and equitable by all the communities that live in the country? So these are all matters in which the US government is deeply interested, and I'm certain that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton would like to know the recent developments with regard to these matters.
Thank you, Professor Peiris. It's great having you here. I'm Chuck Conconi, and this has been Focus Washington.